2015. Madam Clerk, please do the roll call.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Honeman.
Here.
Mr. Steele. Here. Ms. Domboski.
Present.
Mr. Flynn. Mr. Flynn indicated he would be late. Mr. Trainey.
Here.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Mr. Evans.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Mr. Starr.
Here.
Ms. Johnston. Here. Mr. Hall.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Steele, would you lead us to the pledge, please, sir? Thank you, sir. There are no minutes to previous meetings. Our clerk is taking care of them, so we're right up to date. Mayor's report. Mr. Mayor is not here, but Mike, anything? No, sir. Okay. Assembly Chair's report. Remember, we had a work session on Title 23. I've got to open up the hearing tonight, but what we're not going to do is take action on it. I want you to have all your amendments in by the 16th. And then, if you get your amendments in, we're going to have a work session on the 18th, I think at 1 o'clock, ma'am?
That is correct.
Okay. And we're going to go through all your amendments one by one. That gives the administration a chance to come back to us on the amendments. That's how I want to do this. So we'll have it. If people want to testify tonight, they can, but I wish they'd wait until we see the amendments to testify for the meeting of the 22nd. So you've got till December 16th to get your amendments in.
Mr. Chairman, I have some comments on that. Today I received a summary of, basically it was sort of the rationale on the opposition to the current stuff that we talked about at the work session. I was forwarded that by the administration. Is there a program that they're going to join to kind of package their comments uniformly so that we don't get them haphazardly like that? Or can you, I tried to reach it out with Mr. Schutte today, but what's going to be the case on the 16th? Are we going to?
I'll deal with the administration on the process. Okay?
Well,
I haven't seen the email that I heard about. Haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind having a civil conversation either at a work session or not, but if that's the case, then we'll just hold them and move them on the floor.
No, I'd like to have them on the 16th so we can try and put them in a good format. It works better for us, Bill.
Okay.
And I do want to get the response back from the administration civilly on how they feel about the amendments.
Okay. Have you seen what
We'll
I'm
take action.
Have you seen what I'm talking about yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to see it, though.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see it too sent to us if
Yeah.
it concerns us.
Who
Thank
did it
you.
go to, do you know?
I don't know. 30 names.
I'll ask the administration for a copy of it then. That's all I've got on the Assembly Chair's report. Committee reports?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Marijuana Committee meeting met last week, and everything's beginning to come to fruition that we've been working on. We've got a sales tax ordinance that is headed to the Finance Committee meeting. I'm sure Ms. Gray Jackson will address that in her report. The land use is passed through the Community Development Committee and is headed to P&Z for public testimony on that. And we saw a first draft of the dual licensing at our meeting last week. And what we're waiting on that one is final draft from the state on their regulations that are coming from the Marijuana Control Board. And as soon as we get those, then all of that will be embedded in it, so we're sure the language is correct. And we should see all of these before the body in January, with hopefully action done on all of them by the end of January.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. It's my understanding that the taxation issue will go to the Finance Committee on the 17th.
Correct.
And be sent on to us for the meeting of the 22nd, so we can get introduced in time to deal with it before the election deadline. Thank you, sir. Ms. Johnston, ma'am? Mr. Starr, sir.
Several comments and then a request from the chair for direction. As I said last meeting, the summary comments for the audit plan, sort of the draft audit plan, if you have a specific area of interest or study, and we'd like to get those to the auditor for consultation and get into a formal plan. If we can get those by the 16th, also, then we can develop next year's audit plan. If there's anything that you'd like to see audited confidentially, you can either reach out to the auditor directly or to myself, and we can push those that direction. Secondarily, as a lot of us read in the newspaper, there was a summary statement based on an administrative request to look at the expenses relating to the Centennial program, and through conversations today with the chairman, Trainee, I've agreed to take on sort of a special study of that, which may enjoin an in-depth audit. I would almost call it a forensic audit per se as a requirement. Subsequently, I put a call into our auditing BDO, and my idea would be to perhaps have a special study tagged on to our overall audit program that occurs at the end of December or starts at the end of December, if that's a possibility. I don't know what BDO can offer to us, but I'd like to see some sort of independent summary of expenses thereof and accounting, and I'll be moving that action item tonight for postponement of payment on the remaining balance due. So in that regard, Mr. Chairman, without exceeding my authority as chairman of the audit committee, the forensic audit certainly has a message and perhaps an expense. How would you like me to handle that?
I'd like you to proceed forward with it. I think there are enough concerns raised by Mr. Chadwick that we need to have an in-depth look forensically at how the money was spent and where it was put.
Okay.
And for that matter, what's due to the city.
Well, I'll agree to that, and I'll package it for presentation to the audit committee, which has administration members as well as assembly members, and I think we'll take it there. So I appreciate your direction, but I'd like to have the audit committee weigh in on the scope and the range of that and the cost before we agree to go for that.
Fine, sir.
I'll do that in the next couple of weeks.
Good.
Right. If I can also have a point of privilege as it relates to another item, I know we try to do these as audit reports, but sometimes we get astray. Currently, I'm frustrated with again, the media summary reports that the Bragaw extension has been sort of killed. And I guess what I sense on that is that, bluntly, I believe that the mayor exceeded his authority to do such a thing. There's three elements that I see, and I've asked our legal summary, when she can get around to it, to provide a consult as it relates to the three elements that are concerning to me. One of them is the planning and zoning summaries, and the findings of planning and zoning are appealed to the Board of Adjustment. They're not appealed to the Assembly, and they're not the purview of the mayor to decide or influence. So with the finding of planning and zoning, the only recourse that's in the code or our law is that the Board of Adjustment be engaged to deal with the appeal. Secondarily, as those that have been more senior members here, we have had several appropriations of grant money. We've received large sums of grant money, and we've expensed that. We've appropriated it through this body and through these actions. And so the idea that we could sort of just make it all go away because the mayor would like it to, I don't think is good business. That's not what the public would expect us to fiduciarily be responsible. There may be things that we have to pay back the state, and there may be contracts that we've entered into that need to be undone. So prudently, I would want to approach it from a conversation of what the Assembly role is in all of this. And so the idea that it's just going to go away, if that is the discussion that we have, I suggest we have it at this level as well as the consult legally. I put a call into Mr. Falsey to try to produce some answers, and I don't think we want to debate it tonight, but I certainly would want the public to recognize that it isn't entirely an executive order that handles this situation. We don't have such a thing.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Peterson, sir, on your committee. So how are cell towers doing?
Well, the cell tower group made our presentation to the Community and Economic Development Committee a couple of weeks ago, and so that is actually heading over to Planning and Zoning, and I believe Ms. Domboski will be covering that here shortly. Thank you.
Mr. Evans, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the Ad Hoc Committee on Chronic Inebriation and Substance Abuse met on December 3rd. We had a report from Nancy Burke, who is the homeless coordinator. She rolled out the administration's plan for dealing with homelessness and in particular the subset of the chronic inebriates. And we intend to have another meeting after the first of the year in which we'll get Assembly feedback to that plan and any additional items that the Assembly would like to see attached to the current plan.
Thank you. Ms. Gray Jackson, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Budget and Finance Committee, as Mr. Hall mentioned, will be meeting on Thursday, December 17th, and we're going to have an hour-and-a-half meeting this time around because we have a lot to discuss. We're going to be discussing Mr. Evans' tax cap ballot proposition ordinance. We're also going to be discussing the marijuana sales tax proposed ordinance before it gets introduced. And we're also going to have a report or discussion from the administration on the 2016 bonds, and in addition to everything else that we usually have on that agenda. And right after that meeting, we're going to have the SAP Review Committee meeting from 1:30 to 2:30. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's going to be a busy day. Mr. Flynn, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pretty briefly, this being the holiday month, the AMATS committee meeting policy committee meeting will take place on the 17th next week. It doesn't look like it's going to be a particularly heavy agenda. And secondly, at your behest, Mr. Chairman, we did have an ad hoc committee discussion of what are we going to do pending the outcome of the Ketchikan versus State of Alaska lawsuit as to how we manage education funding. The discussion yesterday was primarily legal in nature. Mr. Falsey gave some perspectives based on both his private practice prior to coming to municipality and his public experience. I have promulgated an email that I forwarded to Mr. Harris to dig into the potential fiscal impacts to the city and how we manage that with the expectation that ultimately, in the end of the day, we're going to be paying the same amount of money for local education. How do we manage our fiscal system to accommodate that? That'll be the topic of our next meeting, and I don't feel a sense of overwhelming urgency to get to that, but I've asked Mr. Harris and his team to take a look, and when they are comfortable, they have good answers, we'll reconvene and report back. If anyone, I did copy the clerk on that email. If anybody needs to see it, by all means, I'm happy to share, or she can get it to you as well. And finally, if I may take a brief moment of personal privilege.
Go ahead, sir.
I would just note that former Mayor Mystrom has sponsored or hosted two teams to the shootout in the last 2 years that have gone winless, and I hosted one that won the whole shebang. Take it for what it's worth.
Ms. Dembowski, ma'am.
Thank you. I can't follow that, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, the Community and Economic Development Committee met on December 2nd. We had added to the agenda tonight's item. It's 2015-131, and we did not have time to take it up. Committee members have requested that be postponed so it can be taken up in committee. So I will be asking for a postponement till January 12th. Our meeting will be January 6th. Secondly, we had a robust discussion regarding Title 23, the ordinance that's before us, 2015-127. At that time, we had both the department and industry professionals that presented, and they were part of the work session on Friday as well. With respect to cell towers, I did receive the ordinance from Mr. Wheeler, and I've passed it on to Assemblymember Council Tucker just to help me tweak a couple things, but we will be introducing it. At the committee meeting, it seemed all committee members were willing to sponsor it, so your names are on it. If you would like your name off of it, let me know, because I will be submitting it on Friday, so it'll be on the agenda for introduction on the 22nd. But I'll ask for the public hearing to not be held until the second meeting in February. With that said, P&Z I've talked to Tyler Robinson, the chair of P&Z, and they have the cell tower ordinance already, and they have it scheduled for public testimony on their end, February 1st. They also have the draft marijuana ordinance for zoning and land use. They have public testimony here in this chamber on December 14th on that item. So we are moving relatively quickly. I have not yet received an answer back from the administration, but we all know we've been watching the land use plan map and trying to get that, kind of run that with the marijuana and all these other big ordinances we're doing. Initially, the intent was to have it back before the Assembly by the end of January so we could potentially take action. After speaking with the chair of P&Z via email, it appears that timeline may have a significant hiccup. So I have sent a detailed email to, or I responded to Tyler and CC'd the administration, so I'm waiting to hear. So I'll update you on that. All right, and the only other thing I will say is Assembly Members Johnston and Evans, we heard from Kirk Wickersham at the committee meeting, and he was requesting that we reevaluate a potential mercy rule. And for those that were there, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but essentially he went to refinance his house, and they found that 31 years ago when it was built, that it was 700 feet too close to the property line. So essentially the department said it's a 4-unit dwelling. They said you have to close down one of your renters and you can't use that side. So it was one of those topics that didn't really make much sense. So he came to the committee and presented it, and Ms. Johnston and Mr. Evans are going to work through that. And then Mr. Hall and myself are going to work on potentially extending authorization for previously approved subdivisions and developments that are underway. Yes. Oh, do I have it wrong? Oh, darn it. You have the good one. Well, those are the two ordinances. So, so Mr. Hall, we have the mercy rule then? Okay, we have the mercy rule. They have the developments. Thank you. I'll make sure to correct that with Dennis. So we'll be working with Mr. Wheeler to try to get those back to the Assembly in short order. The other thing I will just touch upon, I have an update regarding the special orders tonight. It's in the AK Alchemist item. The hearing in the AK Alchemist matter was concluded on November 24th, 2015, and the parties have submitted supplemental briefings. The clerk has published the documents related to this matter. Executive session is scheduled for this evening so that the Assembly may consult with its legal counsel. Mr. Flynn has included a conflict disclosure on the consent agenda. Acceptance of this disclosure by the Assembly on the consent agenda is not a finding of conflict. The Assembly will address Mr. Flynn's conflict disclosure and updates from any other Assembly members on the record before convening the executive session with legal counsel. Conflict disclosures updates are not required to be in writing. The Assembly will not be taking action on the AK Alchemist appeal tonight. The anticipated schedule is that the proposed action by the Assembly will be published timely for the December 22nd, 2015 Assembly meeting. No action will be taken by the Assembly on this matter on December 22nd because the applicant's legal counsel is not available. Counsel for the parties will have the opportunity to address the Assembly briefly on January 12th, 2016 before final action by the Assembly. So I think everybody got their packets, and just a reminder, and I'll probably do it after the executive session again tonight. After our executive session, ex parte rules still apply. You may not discuss the merits of this case with anyone. That includes with each other. Those deliberations are not appropriate to be done between each other. So we'll just go through that. So if you have any questions, but
No conflicts?
no conflicts.
We're conflict-free tonight. That's great. Mr. Steele, sir.
Thank you. The Enterprise Committee that was scheduled for the 10th has been canceled, and the administration says it's almost Christmas. We ought to take a break. So we'll get back to it next month.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Honeman, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Likewise, the Public Safety Committee meeting for December has been canceled, and we will pick back up on the third Wednesday of January. And give me a second, I'll see if I can find an appropriate date for that. And it appears that it would be the 20th of January, and I will make sure we get that posted and timely.
Thank you, sir.
I will ask that if the chief is possible, if he could maybe address. There's been some concerns about juvenile that was assaulted in a garage at a home. And I know you can't talk about the merits of the case. Perhaps if you could just brief us all on where the status is on the juvenile that was assaulted by other fellow classmates. I believe it's maybe in another jurisdiction's hands or another agency's hands to be reviewed. So if it's possible to step up. Another thing, Chief, if you don't mind, if you've got an update on the officer that was injured the other night, trying to apprehend a subject. So that would be great. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but we're not meeting this month, so I thought it might be appropriate if you could just let us know the status.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm going to have D.C. Gillum brief you on that because he's been handling it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Through the chair to Mr. Holman, the case you're referring to came to the Anchorage Police Department in July. It was investigated immediately. Unfortunately, there was some misleading information. It required us to do some backtracking on the investigation. There was no delays or anything caused by APD's investigation. It has been forwarded to the proper authorities, and I don't know yet if any charges has yet been filed.
Okay.
Okay. And there was another question about the officer.
The officer that was injured the other day was
Then Virgil, that
broken
hurt
face bone or something.
in his eye, face bone.
It is. I got a message from him about him earlier this morning. He's supposed to see a specialist, and we don't know the extent of it, but it was serious enough to maybe warrant surgery, but we don't know yet if it's going to require it.
Okay. Does that rise to the level of perhaps a felony assault? Will the state be handling charges, or is that at municipal level?
If it's a serious physical injury, then it is considered a felony. So.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You're
Appreciate
welcome,
it. That concludes Assembly comments. We're now going down to the addendum to the agenda. If I get a motion, Ms. Gray Jackson, including the addendum to the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to include the addendum to the agenda.
Second.
Moved in second. I'll go through it. Item 9F7. Ordinances and resolutions for introduction. This is same memorandum, AM 739, 2015, Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility Board of Directors appointment. Michelle Egan. Next item in front of us will be item 9F8, Resolution AR 2015-325, resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating amount not to exceed $500,000 of Fire Service Area Fund 131 fund balance to the Fire Service Area Fund 131, an amount not to exceed $430,000 of Area-Wide Service Area Fund 101 fund balance to Area-Wide Service Area Fund 101, all within the Anchorage Fire Department 2015 operating budget, commensurate with anticipated 2015 expenditures. That's from the Fire Department. Public hearing requested on 12/22/2015. And that's everything that I've got on the addendum agenda. I do have a laid on the table item. Is there any objection to the addendum to the agenda? Madam Clerk, seeing no objection, that is approved. We're now going to laid on the table. I've got one item.
Mr. Chairman.
Give me a motion on
Move
that,
to
ma'am.
incorporate laid on table item.
Okay.
Second.
I think you all have a copy of it. It is referred to as item 9B4A. It is AR 2015-316A, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its protest regarding a new winery liquor license number 5427 for Double Shovel Cider Company, LLC, doing business as Double Shovel Cider Company, located at 302 West 58th Avenue, DNC, Anchorage, Alaska, 99518, and authorizing the municipal clerk to take certain action.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
Would you kindly repeat the item number for that?
It's item 9B4A.
Thank you very much.
Did you get a copy of it, Mr. Flynn?
I did, yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I had it numbered correctly.
Is there any objection to laid on table item? Not seeing any objections, Madam Clerk. We've amended the agenda in front of us. Ms. Jackson, I'll need a motion. Great, Jackson. I'll need a motion on this consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Now we'll go to those items that are pulled for a little further discussion. Mr. Honeman.
For discussion on the regular agenda, 9 Delta 5.
Thank you. Mr. Steele, sir.
On the consent agenda, which one is it? It's the one for Michelle Egan.
The one for what?
It's on the regular agenda, yeah.
It's on the regular agenda. Yes, pass me by, Mr. Chairman, right now. I'll pull it at the end.
Ms. Dabowski, ma'am.
Thanks. Mr. Starr, are you pulling 9B3? Okay, then I'll hold. 9 Delta 10, please. And pursuant to Assembly Council, we'll leave Mr. Flynn's on there and take up his, we'll just leave it on there and we'll take up his disclosure later.
That's all, ma'am? Mr. Flynn, sir. Okay. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to pull 9 Elephant 2. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
92?
E as in echo.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, sir.
No items, Mr. Chair.
This may be a record
I
tonight.
always miss that.
Mr. Peterson, sir.
No items, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Starr, sir.
Well, is somebody going to pull the water utilities one and put them on the spot for the acceptance of the Platinum Award? 9A1?
You just did.
Good. I'm also going to pull 9 Bravo 3.
I don't see it.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Johnston, ma'am.
9E3.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Hall, sir.
No items.
Okay. Mr. Steele.
I knew you'd get back to me.
Only because the clerk reminded me.
I know it.
I would have been down the road.
I can't find it in here.
Okay.
I know it's here, though.
Well, tell us later. We can reconsider it if we need to.
9F7 on the consent agenda.
9F7
On the addendum.
on the addendum agenda.
Yes, sir. I knew I saw it somewhere.
I'll go through it with everybody. Madam Clerk got it all done. Item 9D5, item 9D10, item 9E2, item 9A1, item 9B3, item 9E3, and 9F7. Is that all of them, Madam Clerk? Okay. Let's vote on the balance of the consent agenda. Please vote. Those items were approved. We're now going to go through those items that are pulled for further discussion. Mr. Starr, you have item 9A1, Resolution AR 2015-318.
Move to approve.
Second.
That's unanimous.
Yes.
Seeing no objection, Madam Clerk, that's approved. Mr. Starr.
Yep. This is a resolution recognizing the Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility for 2015 Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies Platinum Award for Utility Excellence.
Come on down.
Yes, Mr. Jockla, you should come down because I don't think we have this printed in platinum, but we certainly have it printed on paper.
But it's not printed on water, is it?
He's got it in his hand. Whereas the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies began an awards program in 2000 to honor the exceptional operation and innovative management practices of the nation's leading public drinking water systems. And whereas the Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility previously won the Gold Award for Competitiveness Achievement in 2001, the first year of the program. Whereas the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies Platinum Award recognizes the continuous success of Gold Award winners in implementing the industry's benchmark attributes of effective utility management, including the following: strategic business planning, measuring and reporting service levels and performance, continual improvement management framework, production quality, customer satisfaction, employee and leadership development, operational optimization, financial viability, infrastructure stability, operational resiliency, community sustainability, the water resource adequacy, stakeholder understanding and support. And whereas the agency honored AWWU with one of 8 Platinum Awards for Utility Excellence at its 2015 Executive Management Conference in Savannah, Georgia in October of this year. And whereas recognition among peers in the industry through the prestigious Platinum Award underscores AWU's commitment to ensure reliable service, safeguard the public health, protect the environment, and long into the future. Therefore, the Assembly now and therefore resolves that Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility be recognized for receiving the prestigious AMWA Platinum Award for Utility Excellence, marking the reliability delivery of services to our citizens and advancing the municipality of Anchorage to a new standard of excellence. Passed and approved this day by the Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chair,
Sir, go ahead.
the reason that we belong to groups like the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies is not to go collect awards, although we like to think of this as the Stanley Cup of the industry, but rather so that we can tap the best minds in the industry to learn as much as we can about how to operate efficiently and how to serve our customers better. And to that end, all of the attributes of the effective utility management that Mr. Starr read as part of the resolution are things that we've gained from working with groups like AMWA. So we appreciate your commitment to helping us ensure reliable service and safeguard public health and protect the environment long into the future. So I know that many of our staff are here today, and most of our staff have had their hands on the Stanley Cup. And I'd like to pass this around so that you can put your fingerprints on it, too. So thanks very much.
Mr. Flynn has a comment for you, sir. Mr. Flynn.
Yeah, don't drop it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Jokela, and thank you to your team. I don't think it's a big secret that I've been probably as vigilant as any on our enterprise activities, including AWU, over the years. And I do appreciate how effectively you've managed and improved your operating practices during my tenure on this body, and thank you. And it's obviously a well-earned award, which I'll put my fingerprints on.
Please do.
Mr. Honeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Jokel, I just wanted to have you please extend my congratulations to all the staff. I know no one single person can do it all. It's a huge and vast infrastructure, and the operations are pretty complex. And it's, you know, we're in a pretty extreme environment, and I know we're challenged by some aging infrastructure as well. That most of it's below ground. You really can't see it until something goes drastically wrong. So thank you guys and gals for doing everything you do day in and day out to keep our drinking water and wastewater safe and moving.
Thank you, Mr. Honeman. That's our buried treasure, 1,600 miles of pipe.
Mr. Steele, sir.
And when you dig it up, you get to keep what you find.
Would you like some of the dug up stuff?
You guys do a great job. I understand you had some legislators out to the Asplin and heard good reports. And so just keep on doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job, and accolades to all the staff.
Thanks very much. You're always welcome to come visit our facilities at any time, so just let us know.
Thank you, and again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Take care. Next item in the front is item 9B3, Resolution AR 2015-321. Mr. Starr.
I'd like to postpone assembly action until I'm not certain that I can bring the item back for discussion on the 22nd.
No, but you get it further down the road. Let's bring it back to 22nd, sir, and then if we got to extend it beyond, then we will.
Move to postpone assembly action until the 22nd.
Second.
I have a question for the administration. If it's
is there any objection to that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I mean, I posed this question. I think everyone saw my question specifically on this topic. I don't know that Mr. Abbott responded to everybody, but he did respond to me that his preference was we act tonight, but I'll let him speak to that, into what I had anticipated as Mr. Starr's question.
No, it's probably different to the CFO. Mr. Harris, on items that we postpone into next year, do we formally encumber them as a potential payment due in this 2015? Is that how, or what do we do if this actually goes into payment in 2016?
I'll defer to my colleague, Mr. Wilbur.
Through the chair, Mr. Starr, if we encumber the money in 2015, it stays in our 2015. If we actually make the payment in 16, that's okay, but we need to encumber the money, appropriate the money in this year. And if I could on this matter start off, I think it's important, while the audit may be something that the Assembly and the administration want to pursue, I mean, we already have invoices and bills that are due to vendors from 2015, and I think it's the municipality's obligation to pay those invoices for services that have already been completed in 2015, which is the purpose of this appropriation. Thank you.
I don't disagree, and my intention would be to have the answers back from some preliminary findings on the 22nd. I don't want to get into it per se, but there are some things that some of the purchases actually extend into 2015, 2016 hockey season, for example, that I recognize. So I think the idea that we have a conversation between now and the 22nd, I'll try to do that as audit chair.
Thank you. Mr. Abbott, comment?
No, just to say that we've validated that these invoices are entirely appropriate. The services were rendered as directed by municipal authorities at the time. So I don't believe there's any question as to the validity of the claims and the validity of the charges. We've satisfied ourselves, and in some cases with internal audits help, to make sure that we were able to demonstrate that. So it is our preference that this item be approved tonight if possible. If it's not possible, then we won't. But we would like to pay these vendors as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Ms. Dombowski, ma'am.
Thank you. With absolutely no disrespect to anything Mr. Abbott said, I have confidence in his abilities. But considering the audit that was presented, or the review, I should call it, the review that was presented to us, I think it's our responsibility to have confidence that those are accurate. And considering what I've seen, this, quite frankly, was the most egregious review I've seen in my 3 years on the Assembly. And I won't vote to put 1 penny more into this, which I'd like to say I voted against most of this anyway, but until we have an audit committee and we validate these invoices. I agree 100%. If it was something that we need to pay, we have invoices, the work was done. But I think considering what was just dropped on us Friday night, or whenever it was we got it, I think the audit committee has a responsibility to look at this before we expend any more money. So I support Mr. Starr's amendment or postponement. I think it gives us a couple weeks. We can have that discussion. The administration can present those reviews, those invoices to us, and then we can come back with confidence and say, yes, we should. But at this point, I'm not in a position where I'm just going to take someone's word for it. We have a responsibility to vet it.
Thank you, Ms. Dombowski. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate the word that Ms. Dombowski used in terms of the review, the most egregious review, because I think it's tended on being unethical. It's really, really bad. But at the same time, I believe that the claims are valid. Okay, we have more to concern ourselves with in that review than these few vendor payments. And I really don't think that this administration or the vendors out there should suffer because of some mismanagement from a prior administration. I mean, they're already dealing with mismanagement with SAP and now this, and I just think it's not fair. We have a lot to consider based on that review. I think it was like 5 pages, and I think that it's our responsibility to pay our bills, and I really think that we should move on and make this appropriation so these bills are paid, because we have a lot to discuss at the audit committee. And I'm looking forward to that discussion. And I like the fact that Mr. Starr mentioned forensic, because that may very well be an issue too. With that said, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to vote to move on with this payment to these small businesses that have been waiting for payment for the services they provided. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Starr, sir.
Well, several things that I've asked for, and again, it's sort of already started here, I've asked the auditor to sort of repackage it into a little bit more of a formal report. What he's generated was a response to administrative questioning, so I hope in the next couple of days to have it sort of re-summarized into some more of a formal report, either for acceptance or clarity on some of the findings that he has in there as they relate to our role. Secondarily, if you'll notice that the appropriation is entirely out of fund balance, or in this particular case, on the backs of the property taxpayers and those that fund government generally. My understanding early on in the program was that there was going to be matching funds for some of this, and I want to initially focus in on the fact that it was there collections that we didn't take in that perhaps could defer some of these payments so that we don't hit the general fund for all 69,000. So again, in hope that I can find some of that information out as they're pending or uncollected in-kind payments or in general contribution match from some of those that said they'd step up and match. If we can find some additional money and collect it or burden it, then I don't think we'll have to pay entirely the $69,000 out of the general fund, which would be another goal between now and the 22nd.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Johnston, and then we'll vote on this.
Yes. How past due are these bills? What are the length of the?
Most of the bills were received this summer, in some cases June or July. I think through the course of this review, we identified a couple that came in August.
So we're getting close to over 6 months?
Yeah, I'd say and certainly 6 months since services were provided. The bills might be a little bit fresher than that. But in most cases, the services were provided in June.
And then as far as finding additional funds in this audit and reimbursing fund balance, could that all be closed out in this year if this was done before first quarter budget or at least before February 1st?
Well, that'd be up to Robert and his folks. But if, we accrue, so if there's a revenue associated with a 2015 activity and or an expense associated with 2015 activity, as long as it was encumbered or anticipated, it would be a 2015 activity.
And we just need to, before we close the books, and so we have
Right.
we know what our fund balance is.
Right.
So if this was done in a timely manner, we could pay back the $69,000 if we do find additional funds.
Sure. Any revenues that come in will flow through to fund balance. So whether or not they're known before the bills are paid or after the bills are paid, any additional revenues that come from this program are going to come into fund balance.
And then at this time, do you know if any of these vendors are looking at doing any legal challenge to any of this?
I'm not aware of any.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Honeman, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my colleagues, I highly encourage the audit, of course. I think we need to make sure we get to the bottom of what went wrong and try not to allow something like that to happen in the future. But I also highly encourage us. We pay our bills, and as I think the municipal manager said, we have seen this before where if funds will come in and it's after the end of the year, it'll go to fund balance. I feel fairly comfortable. It's not a small amount by any means, but it's something that we need to make sure we pay our bills. We can use the weight of the municipality and our legal department if we know that there's somebody individually that needs to reimburse or pay. So otherwise, encouraged to finding the other revenues that may be still hanging out there. Thank you.
Last comment, Ms. Domowski?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just need to make a clarification. I don't think Mr. Starr or myself is advocating for not paying our bills. But what we saw with the course of the review, there were many things that were paid without invoices. There were things that were paid by a shake of a hand. And I think when we receive a review like that and then an appropriation for $69,000 comes in front of us, for us to turn around and say we don't even want to see the receipts, I think it's a leap of faith, and it's one that I'm not willing to take coming on the heels of a document that we just received. So that's why I was just asking for a 2-week delay, and that would give us the opportunity to sit down with the administration and go through and make sure that what we're paying now is accurate, and then we will go forward with the next phase. But that's it.
Okay, the question in front of us by Mr. Starr, seconded, is to postpone this item for action until the 22nd. So please vote. A yes will do that, a no will not postpone it. The item will be back in front of us on the 22nd. Next item in front of us is on item 9D5, Assembly Memorandum AM 726-2015, Military and Veterans Affairs Commission appointments. Mr. Honeman, you pulled that.
Move to approve.
Mr. Honeman.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, to the administration, are our commissions, boards and commissions, are they getting fairly close to full? Do we have vacancies still on some of these?
We have virtually completed the 2015 appointment cycle. You might see a few onesies and twosies come through, but I believe we're essentially complete.
Okay. I know there's a really good, strong veteran, and also would urge, perhaps a review if there's a vacancy on any other boards.
Please send his name over to mine or Owner Browse's attention.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments on this item? Ask unanimous consent and approval. Not seeing an objection, Madam Clerk, that is approved. On page 3, we're dropping down to item 9D10, the same memorandum, AM 731-2015, contract amendment number 2 to professional services contract with Dowell for the Eagle River Traffic Mitigation Phase 1. Ms. Dombowski, you pulled it.
Move to approve.
Second.
Ms. Dombowski, ma'am.
Mr. Hanson, can you come on down? I don't have a prize for you, but my stimulating conversation, I'm sure, will help. Mr. Hanson, as we're looking at this phase 2, what's our time frame?
Well, you mean on the amendment here?
Mm-hmm.
The design will probably take 2 years, and assuming we have enough money for this portion, we'll be able to do that probably in, 2019 or so.
Okay, and my second question, down here you have an additional amendment maybe requested for preliminary engineering through Business Boulevard. So Business Boulevard itself isn't part of the original design? Is that how I'm understanding it?
No, the extension over to Business Boulevard was, we did a kind of a route study, and that's about as far as we got on that. So it would have to do further funding on it to do the actual design study report, select the preferred alternative, and do the design.
Okay. I'll hold the rest. I'll get with you maybe next week.
That's fine.
And we'll sit down and talk about this a little bit more in depth. That helps me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Honeman, you're next, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Hanson, I just was looking, good answer, explanation. $8.5 million from grants for design and construction. So at this particular contract for more design, prep and design, right?
This contract's for design work, yes, sir.
Okay, so it's about $2 million into the $8.5 million.
Yeah.
Do you have any ballpark what it may cost to do the project? Anything?
I don't remember what that is right now.
Is $6.5 million going to do it?
Not the entire project.
I didn't think so.
Not even close.
Thank you.
There are no other questions. Thank you. No other comments from assembly members. Please vote on this item. That is approved. Next item in front of us is on page 3. It's item 9E2, Information Memorandum AIM 154, 2015, Internal Audit Report 2015-09, Parking Garage Cash Control Follow-Up Parking Services Department. You pulled that, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I know.
Anyway, no, I pulled it because I just want to take a moment to publicly, number one, thank the internal auditor for doing another fine job on an audit, and also the Parking Services Department, also known as the Anchorage Community Development Authority. I see Mr. Halcro in the audience. I think Mr. Schutte is here also. But this is an example of a follow-up audit, and you really listened. I talked to the internal auditor today, and he said this was an easy audit because we walked in and you folks had done the job that you were supposed to do. And I just wanted to personally take a moment and thank you for having a really good audit. There are a couple of things that still need work, but you did a tremendous job, and you paid attention, and I thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There appear to be no other questions. Ask consent from the body on the acceptance item. Not seeing objection, that is approved, Madam Clerk. Next item in front of us, item 9F3, Information Memorandum AIM 156, 2015, Monthly General Government Revenue Status Report to the Assembly as of November 15, 2015.
Move to accept.
Second?
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, I was just wondering from the chief. I'm sorry I didn't put this in my written questions before, but I'm still looking at the traffic citations, the actuals for 2015, and they're still below budget. And I was wondering, first of all, if the new hires are out on the street yet, and do you think we'll be fine by the last quarter as far as traffic citations? I could say that maybe the traffic citations are down because people are driving better, but.
So we did have a class that graduated back in November, and they are in the field training phase of their employment. And so, yes, they are on the street, but they're paired with a field training officer.
Do you see any hopeful fourth quarter as far as traffic citations, as far as the budget?
Go ahead.
Ms. Johnson, through the chair, we've got two things that are affecting that third quarter that when I talked to fiscal this afternoon about. One is that fewer citations were issued, but also the collections of some of those fines were down.
I saw that.
Yeah, 37%, does that sound right? Okay, somewhere along that time. So I don't know if we can predict right now what's happening with the numbers of citations. I have not yet asked, what we might be facing for the fourth quarter.
Because if it is as much collections as citations, then I just would hope that you're addressing that, because that seems to be internal. That would be more of a management issue versus out on the street, correct? And then also, would citations go up? Don't we receive federal funding for over the holidays?
We do. There are some enforcement actions. Typically, some of it is for DUI or OUI enforcement. We used to have a few of those clicker tickets, but we've not had that. I haven't seen anything in that recently in the last couple of months. But I will be happy to try to get some gauge as to what we are, where we're at for the fourth quarter, and I'll be happy to send that to you if you like.
That'd be great. I'm sorry I didn't. I usually try to ask these questions before the meeting, and sorry to do it here. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Flynn has a question, sir.
No question for the staff. Just Ms. Johnson, I don't know if you saw my follow-up questions on this particular matter. You might append that email so that we can get a comprehensive Assembly memorandum detailing the
Right, because it's not just those. That was the one that screamed the most, but yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, in fact, I guess in the past, we have, when we've sent these questions out over the weekend and we have answers, we usually have them in our blue files, the comments from administration or clerks, but I didn't see it this time.
The clerk will respond to you, I think.
Through the chair, Ms. Johnston, we did away with that practice about a year ago.
Oh, really? Oh, someone's asleep at the wheel.
However, there was one member that asked for those copies to keep coming, and that was Mr. Flynn. And so I'll send an email offline, and if that's what you'd like, we can continue the process.
I guess the only reason is that sometimes our questions, because it's such a short timeline, and folks don't get a chance to go back to their emails to see the responses, and the items come up before the meeting. Sometimes it's helpful, but that's just one person's opinion.
Thank you. As unanimous acceptance by the Assembly of this item, not seeing any objections, Madam Clerk, that item is accepted by the body. Next item in front of us that was pulled is off the addendum to the agenda. It's item 9F7, the same memorandum, AM 739-2015, Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility Board of Director appointments. That was pulled by Mr. Steele, I think. Mr.
Yes,
Steele?
Mr. Chairman. I move to accept the appointment of Michelle Egan as the Water Wastewater Board.
Second.
It's a move to,
This is a public hearing item, Mr. Steele. It has to be introduced.
Move to introduce item F7.
Is there a
Second.
second, and is there a third?
Second.
third.
Okay, we got him. Anything?
I think it's an excellent appointment, and she's joining, of course, a Platinum Award-winning.
Thank you. Any objection from the body? If not, that'll appear in front of us in 2 weeks. That completes the addendum to the agenda, laid on table items, the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, if we could take up item 11A, I know we have to break after that, but
I'd like to first thank, for a second, anybody appointed to a board or commission tonight? Is there anybody here that was appointed?
come on down.
Come on down and tell us what board or commission you chose to be on, sir. And thank you for your service to the city. Ma'am, I can't see back that far. Sorry.
My name is Nancy Hemsath, and I've been nominated to join the Library Advisory Board.
Great.
Congratulations.
Mr. Honeman.
Just congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for putting in and getting appointed. That completes that, so let's go down to item 11A. Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just move to approve the appointment of Valerie Ritz to the Planning Board
Second.
appointment.
Second.
It's been moved. Who seconded?
Paul.
Second.
Hodeman did, okay. Comments from assembly members? If not, please vote. That item was approved by the body.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir, hold on. It'll appear in a second, I hope. There we go. That was approved. Now, do we have people here from high schools?
We do. That's what I was going to
Why don't you guys line up here? Because there's always a penalty. I know he wants to sign a form for you. Come up here and tell us your name and what school you go to, because we're interested in what school. Yeah. Right up here. You're first in line.
Chugiak High School.
Your name?
Brandon Lowe.
Okay.
Chugiak, Robert Rogers.
Good.
Chugiak, Drew Martin. Chugiak, Harrison Helton. Service, Riley Howard. Service, Daniel Robbins.
Service, Deanna Flynn. Robert Service High School, Tina Castro. Service, Josie McElroy.
Chugiak, Sean Merritt. Chugiak, Blake Johnston.
Service, Kyla Pierce. Service, Brina Gaskoff.
Service, Justin Mojica.
West Anchorage High School. Julie.
Chugiak, Ben Stewart.
Chugiak, Carly Field. Chugiak, Emma Gamble.
Chugiak, Harrison Houston.
Chugiak, Ashley Campbell.
Service, Raymond.
Chugiak, Cami Whitney.
Chugiak, Ian Bernard.
My name is Zoe and I go to Service.
Service, Suri Parker.
Service, River Nygaard. Service, Cozy Mashrada.
Chugiak, John Slice.
Service, Emily Rains. West, Princess Cabarrubias.
West, Carlos Grande.
West High School, Paul Marsh.
Service, Derek Sefcik. Service, Fletcher Tagg. West High School, Logan Daniels. West High School, Austin Tua.
Well, thank you all for being here. And I think the requirement is you spend 2 hours with us?
Mr. Chairman?
Or you sign this and you leave? Mr. Honeman.
Well, I'd like to congratulate each of the students, especially as they're getting near to the end of the semester and Christmas break. Thanks for joining us. Pledge always sounds better. Once again, I'd like to maybe perhaps somebody get the word out to East and Bartlett to start attending. I haven't seen anybody in a while. Thank you.
We'll now take our regularly scheduled dinner break and be back shortly. Madam Clerk, please bring up the voting on it. There. Okay. A yes will reconsider, no will not. We have a little procedural problem we have to deal with it, so please vote yes. Let's get this out of the way. Come on, screen. Mr. Steele seconded it. Mr. Hall brought it forward. Mr. Steele seconded it. That item is reconsidered. This is according to my board. The vote was 9-0 to reconsider. It's back in front of us. I don't know why it's not. It's putting it on the screen now. Okay. We reconsidered item 9B4. Mr. Hall?
Yes, and what I want to do, we approve
We
both.
approved item 9B4A.
I move approval of 9B4A.
Okay. This is to clean up what happened before, so please vote. Okay.
Sorry, we're just having, it's just a little slow right now. Let's take it now.
Was it the Commodore 64? Moved that. Ms. Johnson seconded it. Please vote. A. Mr. Flynn, how do you... Bravo 4A. Yes. That item is approved. And my thanks to Heidi, who is at home watching. And she lets us know what we haven't done right.
Thank you, Mr.
So Heidi,
Chairman.
if you're watching, thank you. She is there. Okay. We're now down on item 14 on page 5 on our agenda. It's item 14A, ordinance AO 2015-127, ordinance repealing and reenacting Anchorage Municipal Code Title 23 to adopt the following.
Waive reading.
Thank you. For the public, if you're here to speak to us on this, we're going to continue this item after we get the amendments in from assembly members, and those may include some of the comments you've got. So what I suggest you do is not testify tonight, because you can't again you cannot on the 22nd. So I'm going to open the public testimony up if anybody wishes to testify. Understanding that we'll take this up again on the 22nd. Anyone at all? Hearing and say no one. Move to continue the public hearing to the 22nd. Mr. Hall? If I get a motion to continue this to the 22nd?
Yes, I move to move it to the 22nd.
Second.
Okay. Let's just vote on that. This will come in back in front of us on the 22nd. Just for the public, what we're going to do is that somebody's got some amendments they want to make. I've asked the assembly members to have it to the clerk by the 16th. We have a work session on this and amendments on the 18th, and be back in front of us on the 22nd. So that takes care of that item. Next item in front is item 14B, ordinance AO 2015-131, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Title 21 Land Use Planning, new code effective January 1st, 2014, to amend Section 21.03.0.
Waive reading.
Thank you. Public hearing on this item is now open, but I'm told there's going to be a motion to likewise postpone this item till the 22nd. Till when, ma'am?
Mr. Chair, this one will be till the 12th.
Of January?
Yeah, because we
Okay.
don't have a committee meeting till the 6th.
Okay. So what I suggest you do is not testify. You'll have a chance on the 12th of January. Hearing and say no one. Public testimony is
Continued.
continued.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to
Ma'am?
continue the public testimony to January 12th with a referral to the Community and Economic Development Committee.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any objection from the body? Not seeing any, so ordered, Madam Clerk. Thank you. You what? Okay. There we go. Okay. Next item in front of us is item 14C, ordinance CO 2015-130, an ordinance authorizing acquisition of lot 1B and 2, Arctic Manor subdivision, PID 009-142-15 and 009-142-02, commonly known as the Bering Street Maintenance Shop, for an amount not to exceed $3,750,000 plus closing costs.
Waive reading.
Waiving the public. Thank you. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, for the record. Spell your last name, and tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? This is the Bering Street facility. Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Discussion from assembly members. Doesn't appear to be any. Please vote. That item is approved unanimously by the body. Next item in front is item 14D, Resolution AR 2015-311, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating a grant in the amount of $115,958 from State of Alaska, Alaska State Library, and appropriating a contribution of $120 from the Anchorage Public
Waive
Library.
reading.
And this is Ready to Read Resource Center grant. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no, public testimony is closed. The wish of the body.
Move to approve.
Discussion from assembly members. Please vote. Count to 9, 10. 2. That item is approved by the body. Next item in front of us, item 14E, Resolution 2015-308, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating an amount not to exceed $376,814 of non-operating income to the Federal Grants Fund 241 for the Program Administration, Planning and Grant Management and Community Development Services in the Department of Health and Human Services. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Spell your last name. Tell us what part of town you live in. Hearing saying no, public testimony is closed. Will wish of the body.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion from assembly members. Not seeing any. Please vote. That was approved by the body. Next item in front is item 14F, Resolution AR 2015-313, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage reappropriating $800,000 to partially fund the purchase of apparatus and equipment for the Chugach Volunteer Fire and Rescue Department, all within the Chugach Fire Service Area Capital Improvement Fund 404, Anchorage Fire Department. Public hearing, there's a accompanying AM with it, 713-2015. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no, and public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion from assembly members. Mr. Starr.
Yeah, just a summary. This isn't new money. This is kind of money given back. You guys read your reports, I'm sure, but they built the fire station in a hurry-up affair, contributed from local match dollars, and now they're asking to respend it on equipment. So it's not in an over budget or under budget or free money. It's just a change of spending. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Ms. Gray Jackson, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some amendments, and they're basically housekeeping amendments.
Okay.
Okay. If we go page 1, line 17, move to delete the words resolved and 2 after September 14, 2015. On line 18, at the beginning of the sentence, add requests that the Assembly. That's the First Amendment.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Ms. Gray Jackson, the reason?
The reason is because the Assembly is the only body that appropriates money, and it's just a little bit of housekeeping, because the way it reads right now is as if the Chugach Fire Service Area Board of Supervisors, is appropriating money, and that's not the case. It's just housekeeping that needed to be fixed, because this is a record document, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any objection to the amendment?
Other than be clear, they do have spending authority. They're elected and appointed to spend money. So I understand your point, Ms. Gray Jackson, but they do, once we give it to them, they appropriate as they see fit. So thank you.
Is there any objection to the amendment? Let's vote on it. This is on our First Amendment. That is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Amendment number 2, move on page 1, line 18, delete the words resolved and 2 after September 14, 2015. On line 19, at the beginning of the sentence, add request that the Assembly. And, Mr. Chairman, the paragraph for both the AR and the AM should read as follows. Whereas the contribution of $800,000 was not needed for the construction project, therefore, the Chugach Fire Service Area Board of Supervisors on September 14, 2015 request that the Assembly reappropriate the funds from the contribution in the amount of $800,000 to vehicle and equipment replacement and so forth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on Ms. Gray Jackson's amendment? Anything? Let's put the amendment up on the board. Please vote. That is approved. Anything else, ma'am?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I know, we're going to. Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Gray Jackson, anything else?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Honeman, anything on this document in front of us?
It's as amended, correct?
It's as amended,
No,
sir.
I just wanted to, again, I think I echo Mr. Starr here. This is a appropriate use of the money. I think it's a great way of using the money that was not necessarily. I remember the hurry up because of the roof collapse, and we got some money from the state, and we were able to chip in some from the funding that we had. So I think this is a great way of making sure that fire service is very well served.
Thank you. Ms. Dombowski, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to note for the record, I think you're the chair of the board, or the president of the board of supervisors. Ronnie Sullivan sitting over here, so if there were technical questions, she can certainly answer them. And I want to point out one of the reasons they're making sure to get this under the wire, because they found a really good deal. They're actually saving money on a fire truck, but they have to have it before the end of the year ordered, so that means they have to have the money available. So by doing it and taking it up, they're saving us money. So I just want to say thank you, Ronnie, for all you do.
Any other questions, comments from Assembly members? If not, please vote. That item is approved. Next item in front of us is item 14G, Resolution Air 2015-314S, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly directing the Municipal Clerk's Office to explore implementing vote by mail election in Anchorage, Alaska. Assembly Ethics and Election Committee, Chair Hall, Chair Trainee, and Assembly members Honeman and Peterson. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, curve the record, spell your last name, and tell us what part of town you live in. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I am Pat Redmond, R-E-D-M-O-N-D. I live in West Anchorage, Northwest, Turnagain. And tonight I'm here speaking as the president of the League of Women Voters of Alaska, and I'm on the board of the League of Women Voters of Anchorage. And we would encourage you to support this resolution. The League has a long position of encouraging voting in any manner possible. And I'd like to read from our state position that supports elections that are free, fair, and accessible to all eligible voters, and voting systems that are secure, accurate, recountable, accessible, and transparent. Given that, that's what we will be looking for as this process continues in the vote, looking at vote by mail, to make sure that it does meet that criteria. We also support a variety of voting methods in addition to voting at the polls. So vote by mail would be one that we would definitely want to look at to encourage more voters. One of the things, as if this passes and the clerk's office does look at vote by mail, we'd like to take a good look at what the cost would be to have a prepaid return postage envelope for the ballot. It came up in discussions recently with some of our league members that there may be people who just are not
well versed in stamps.
Well, they're not computer savvy. They don't know how to, they can't order stamps by the computer, or just for whatever reason. Maybe they can't get out. Maybe they don't even have a neighbor who will get them a stamp. But if they had a return envelope that was prepaid, they wouldn't have to worry about the postage part. Most people would not have a problem with it, but there are people who would. So it's something to look at during the time that this is being done, if this passes.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Mayor? Mr. Hall has a question for you, ma'am. Mr. Hall, sir.
No question, Pat, but just thank you. You've been involved in elections for so long, it's unbelievable, and it's just phenomenal, the time and effort that you give. And I want you to know on behalf of this whole body, it is greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you. And, we probably wouldn't want you to look so hard at vote by mail if it were a lot easier to get people to come work in the polling places on Election Day. And vote by mail would allow more people to vote, and people wouldn't have to be working in the polling places on Election Day. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. My name is Kevin, middle initial D, last name McGee, M-C-G-E-E. I live on the east side of town, specifically the Muldoon area. I have been privileged to be a part of the Stakeholders Committee in exploring the possibility of implementing vote by mail. I look at this as a unique opportunity for the Anchorage electorate to become more involved in the process and potentially allowing more of our citizens to vote. Also, we have discussed in our committee the possibility of cutting costs. Everyone is always concerned about cost on everything. So if there's an opportunity to cut costs and still provide this service, I think it's invaluable for those of us here that live here in Anchorage. I would stress that the Assembly pass this resolution and look forward to getting more people involved in the voting process. With that said, that's ended, and if I may, through the chair, ask permission to make a spectacular public announcement.
Is it relative to some issue you have with
It's very quick.
Okay. Quick.
I would like to announce that as of November 6th, my stepdaughter, Laureen May, Master Sergeant, United States Air Force, was selected Senior NCO of the Year for United States Air Force JBEAR.
Tell her from us congratulations. Thank you. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi. My name is Kim Hayes, H-A-Y-S, and I live here in Anchorage, specifically over by Kincaid Park. And I was born and raised here in Anchorage. I'm raising 2 kids here in Anchorage, and I plan on living here for the rest of my life. I'm also a participant in the stakeholders group that's been exploring vote by mail. Like I said earlier, I'm the mother of 2 young children. I work full-time, which is really more like 60 hours a week. I help my husband with his business in my free time. My kids have swim lessons, play dates, and I try to cook as much as I can, usually every other night. And I'm not even the busiest person that I know. So I'm also somebody who never, ever misses an election. The convenience of voting by mail is something that many people in Anchorage already enjoy. Receiving the ballot in the comfort of your own home gives you plenty of time to peruse it and Google away. It gives you time to sit down with your loved ones and chat about the issues. It also gives me time to sit down with my 9-year-old daughter and talk about why it's so important to vote. I try to give her as much information about the issues that she can understand. What it really does is it makes voting seem much more powerful because it became a family affair in our house once we started doing vote by mail. I used to vote at my polling place, which was my daughter's school, which was unfortunately very, very busy because the only time I could go was before school when everybody else is there. Then I tried voting early at the library, but the only time I could do that was at lunch, so there was always a line. I decided to just go straight absentee voting by mail, and it's been wonderful. A few minutes a night, I can spend some time with my husband talking about the issues, and when I'm good and ready, before the deadline, I put a stamp on it, put it in the mail. So for me, it's really an issue of time. It's time to share the issues with my kids, time to sit down and talk about it, and it doesn't even take that much time to drop it in the mail. My hope is those who normally don't vote for a variety of reasons are going to find the convenience of voting by mail a catalyst to vote. And that's what it really means to me, is getting more people to turn out to vote because time is such an issue for most of us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Questions from assembly members? There don't appear to be any questions. Thank you for your participation. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Assembly. My name is Tom McGrath, and I've been here before saying we should move the elections to the fall because we have such low turnout. And this is a great answer. I know people in Oregon, Washington, Colorado where they have vote by mail. In Oregon, my niece says getting 4 kids in the car so she can go vote is very difficult. Now she can just do it at the kitchen table. In Washington, I have friends that have elderly parents, and their parents can now vote once again, so because they couldn't get to the polls. And in Colorado, my family there just loves it. So the clerk's office did a great job of forming the question and getting inputs from the stakeholders. I believe that they'll do a great job in education of the electorate. They have a very extensive list of who to reach out to do the education process, and I really look forward to this. I think that we've had dismal results at our elections in number of people voting, and I would just love to see 100% vote here in Anchorage. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to testify? Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Christopher Constant, Fairview Neighborhood Downtown. And I am before you to let you know that the deputy clerk, made a pretty intensive presentation on the plans that have been developed so far before the Fairview Community Council at General Meeting, and a motion did pass unanimously to support this effort, and the discussion really surrounded how we can be a part of that process, and we would like to propose, if it comes to a pilot, that you consider the Fairview Rec Center as a central location for your technology for being able to walk or drive to submit a ballot, but the council definitely supports this unanimously.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing seen, no one, participation is closed. What's the wish of the body? Mr. Hall.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Hall.
Yes, I hope the body will support this unanimously. You know, when you stop to think about it, the turnout in general elections, state and federal, you get a much larger turnout during that time. But, you know, I want to share with you, those are a lot easier elections to do. Municipal elections are hard. You sit and there are so many items that you've got to consider. There are bond packages, and everyone, when you go to the polling place, you walk in the booth and you're pretty conscious about the amount of time that you're in there. There's no way you've got time to read the ballot and genuinely look at it. I think being able to sit down and do this in the comfort of your home with the election pamphlet that we mail out with it to give you in depth what you're actually voting on will be phenomenal. We've been working on this for 2 years in the Ethics and Election Committee meeting. We've considered all the issues that have been brought up. We've found that King County and other places in the United States that have already moved to this have found answers to all the questions that we've got. We believe that we can do this pretty flawlessly, and we're ready to step up to the task. So I encourage the body to support this.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Honeman.
I couldn't say it any better than Mr. Hall being our chair. I really appreciated his guidance through the assembly side of it, but more importantly, I just want to shout out to Amanda Mosier and Ms. Jones and the entire clerk's office and staff that's been working on this effort. It's been not an easy one to do, and a lot like herding cats because you're getting all the stakeholders in, but very well done. I will say, and I asked permission of my brother who lives in Snohomish County, just north of the King County in Washington. He said that he loves it, voting by mail, and he would prefer that than the polling station. I do note that Pat had earlier indicated that we hope that perhaps there's money in the budget when we switch to vote by mail to have the prepaid postage. I'm not sure what that cost would be, but it might be something worth exploring. And of course, just to note, one of the stakeholder groups in the meeting was a member representative of the United States Postal Service. So it's a great program and great efforts.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gray Jackson, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to take a moment to thank the Ethics and Election Committee and the Clerk's Office for their work on this project, but I especially want to take a moment and thank Mr. Hall for taking the lead on this project. I sat in on several meetings. I'm not a member of the committee, but I did sit in, and this is a wonderful thing for our community, and I thank you, Mr. Hall, for taking the lead on this, and I'm looking forward to being able to vote by mail with the rest of us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Steele, sir.
Yeah, I do want to thank Amanda in the clerk's office. Amanda took this by the horn and actually went down to Washington State and elsewhere to visit, to learn, and I think it's a great thing. I had a question, however, about what is meant to explore implementing. Does that mean doing it?
I'm sorry, I was distracted. Repeat that.
In the title, it says explore implementing the vote. What does explore mean? Does it mean do it, or does it mean?
Yes, the explore means the resolution states that therefore that we're going to move to a mail-in election in 2017. And we've been exploring it for the better part of 2 years. So we will continue to work out any kinks that we think we may have.
Thank you.
Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I've enjoyed serving on the Ethics and Elections Committee and have seen all the plans and all the discussions about vote by mail, and I'm totally convinced that this is the right direction to go. I think it will get more people involved, get more people voting, which can only help our democracy become stronger. So I want to thank Amanda on all her good work, and thank all the members of the Ethics and Elections Committee for all their hard work as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments for Assembly members? If not, I'm going to make one final comment. Exploring my terminology means we're absolutely going to do this in 2017. We had to have a date, and it's going to be 2017. And I hope, Pat, that the League of Women Voters will get this put on the back of the pamphlet. In 2017, you're going to vote by mail. We need to get this done. And the question of putting something on there to mail this so they don't have to get a stamp, we've got to explore that, because using a stamp is kind of becoming a lost art in our society, as everybody does email. But Ernie, thank you so much for your dedicated effort to this. And Amanda, you've been a shining star in this. And Barbara, thank you. Clerk's office getting this done for us. Now we just need to drive this little item home, because there's a lot of equipment involved in it, a lot of people. But you know, Amanda was telling us that in off years, King County gets about 47% voter turnout, plus or minus. For us to get 47% would be remarkable. Amanda, what did you say they got in the presidential year in King County?
Through the chair, 86%.
Yeah. So we just need to vote and get this moving down the road. With that, Madam Clerk, let's start voting. That item is approved. Should be good.
Mr. Chair, are we at special orders now?
Special orders.
Are we going to change the order of the day and take public testimony before we begin this item? I mean, you know, the end of the. You want to do that?
I think we did
That's a
public
good
testimony,
idea.
didn't we?
What?
I thought we already did public testimony.
Public comment.
No, I mean public comments. I'm sorry.
Item 17. Let's do that. If someone make the motion, change order of the day. Any objections?
Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion to change order today to take up item 17, which is audience participation, prior to item 15.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, Madam Clerk, we've changed the order of the day. So what we've got in front of us now is audience participation, item 17. So if you want to address the 780 item not on our agenda, you've got 3 minutes to talk to us. Anybody here wish to address us on any item that is not an item that's on our agenda tonight?
Mr. Chairman?
Ma'am?
If I can take a point of personal privilege?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are more students here today than I've ever seen, and so I just want to make sure that everybody has your paper signed before we leave to go in executive session, because we may be a while. So does everybody have your paper signed? If you don't, you need to catch us before we go into executive session. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir?
Just to follow on to that, any student not get to introduce themselves to us? Anybody show up a little bit past? I'm seeing some people.
Oh, you'll out them, huh?
I would think that they ought to
Down
probably
and
come
talk
down.
to us. What's your name and what school you go to? Otherwise,
Let
we're
us
not
know.
signing any paperwork.
This way it's on public record and you'll be able to show your teacher that you were here.
You were here.
If you haven't been to the microphone, please come on down. Come on down.
Come on.
I think it's
Otherwise, I have to send the security guard to bring you down here. It's easy if you walk voluntarily.
Hello, my name is Tabitha Silver, and I'm from Service High School.
Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mana Famsino from West.
Welcome, sir.
My name is Castix from West.
Welcome.
My name is Nolani Levino, and I'm from West.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Maya Saley, and I'm from West High School.
Okay. We'll see.
Austin Tua, West High School.
From West?
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Flynn, I think you... I went win. You do.
Mr. Chairman, I noticed that during the break, no one from Bartlett or East was able to view that they were lacking in the attendance here. I called you out.
Okay. That completes this portion. Now we're going to move into a special order. Amy?
Mr. Chair,
This is your area, ma'am.
Thank you. Can we take a 2-minute break?
Absolutely. Take a 2-minute break.
Okay, so here's what I use.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have my agenda. Mr. Chair, sorry, where am I at? Oh, at the suggestion of the clerk, I'm just going to clarify that this is an administrative adjudication, and we will actually be, we'll be going to an executive session, and I believe Vice Chair Gray Jackson will be making the motion, but the Assembly will not be taking action during this hearing. But this is an adjudication by the Assembly, and the action we anticipate will be on January 12th, 2016, as agreed by the parties. The Assembly's proposed action on this matter is anticipated to be introduced on December 22nd, 2015's agenda. No action will be taken at the Assembly meeting on December 22nd, 2015. So that's just to clarify my comments from earlier. And now, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I thought I heard you say something. Now, Mr. Chair, we need to, we'll first, I think, deal with any other Assembly members before we deal with Mr. Flynn. Since the last time we met and deliberated on this topic, if there are any Assembly members that have had any disclosures that they remember that they need to make, they should make them now on the record. Or if you've had any potential ex parte communication, you should disclose that now on the record.
Please cue in if you've got any comments. Don't see any, Ms. Dombrowski.
Okay, thank you. Tonight we had Mr. Flynn made his disclosure, and I'll let him do that again now before we deliberate or make that decision.
Mr. Flynn, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Dombrowski. So several things. First, prior to this becoming an adjudicatory matter, I did have conversations with both the applicant and with his counsel. The applicant did share his longer-term plans for the facility or the property in question, and we had a lengthy conversation about it. I think it would be a nice addition to downtown if you can get it done. Also, as I've cogitated on this, I did send you an email, which you apparently didn't read because I wasn't supposed to do that. So thank you for correcting my bad behavior.
She did verify she did not read it.
That's my understanding. And then finally, you have my written resuscitation in my most recent investment in downtown businesses, and I presume you have some questions to follow up upon that.
Okay. Mr. Flynn, just for the record, can you just kind of really briefly just communicate what your most recent one was that we adopted tonight, just in case?
Yeah, I was approached by the ownership of Humpy's, Flat Top, Sub-Zero, Willowa, et cetera, Blues Central, Steam Dot, Coffee Shop.
You're a popular man.
Asking for a 2-year loan. We came to terms, and actually I employed Mr. Coffey to rewrite the promissory note so that it was done in a manner that I felt was appropriate to protect my interests.
Okay. Mr. Flynn, will the nature of your prior client relationship with Mr. Coffey prevent you from placing the public interest above that prior relationship?
I don't believe so. That's not a current relationship. It was, I've known Mr. Coffey for a long time. I know his expertise in this field. I actually talked to 2 other attorneys before I consulted him, and they advised that he'd be the best person for the job. I actually tried to get his partner, Sherman Ernoff, but he was out of town, so
Okay.
best I could do.
Okay. Mr. Coffey is an attorney, lobbyist, businessman, ACE's co-owner, and prior Assembly member, to name just a few pursuits that carry a wide range of private or prior private relationships throughout the community. Is the risk to public trust so substantial to exclude you from participation as the single member of the downtown district?
I think that's a legitimate question, and I don't have a good answer for you. I think that's something that the body needs to consider, given the breadth of my business interests and his, and the overall public perception of how those intersect.
Okay. Let me go on. Is there any questions? Does anybody want to follow up on that one before I go on to the next one?
Any questions from Assembly members? Mr. Honeman has a question.
I do have another one, but specific to his representation as the sole downtown member.
Let me deal with this one. Mr. Honeman?
No, I guess it's in a way of a comment as well. I mean, most of us have met Mr. Coffey through lobbying this body on behalf of clients. So I don't know if maybe Ms. Tucker can ring in, or if somebody can, I mean, if that in and of itself is a sole reason not to participate with.
I don't think we've been very clear. To be very clear, during this adjudicatory process, which has gone on for months, during that time, Mr. Flynn is indicating that he hired Mr. Coffey as his attorney to help him with the matter. He had tried to hire the partner wasn't in town. So as public officials, we do have a duty to avoid conflict whenever we can. And so it's a matter that the Assembly does have to consider. So with that said, I mean, in that duty to avoid conflict is actually state law. So when we're talking about it, so that's why, because he had been represented by Mr. Coffey during the time span we've been considering this, it's relevant, and that's why we're discussing it, just to clarify for people what we're talking about. And I don't know what the value of that contract was with Mr. Coffey, but
Mr. Honeman,
I can tell you if you want to know.
Any questions, Mr. Honeman?
I guess we would probably need to know, is this a significant or a substantial amount of a contract or legal advice for your business purpose?
He worked for me for 2 hours, 2 billable hours. The total bill was $800, and I charged it to the people to whom I made the loan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing from you, Mr. Starr? Okay.
Okay.
What else, Mr. Dombrowski?
Thank you. This, I believe, will be almost. Okay. May a risk to the public trust be overcome by your track record of representing the public's interest and your ability to place the public interest above this prior client relationship with Mr. Coffey?
I think I have a very robust track record of representing my constituency and the public in a manner that's not always consistent with my best interest.
Mr. Flynn, as Cheryl Brookings pointed out in the Eberhard training, Assembly members have a common law duty to avoid conflict. There it is. Are you comfortable meeting that duty in participation on matters where Mr. Coffey represents a person or entity before the Assembly?
He and I have disagreed more than we've agreed. Yes, I'm very comfortable with that.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, it's my recommendation at this point, considering the 2 hours that Mr. Coffey actually worked for Mr. Flynn, in previous Assembly meetings, Mr. Flynn has indicated that he did not discuss this matter, correct, Mr. Flynn?
That is correct.
And you didn't discuss potential outcomes of this matter with Mr. Coffey?
That is correct.
Okay. With those findings, I do believe that Mr. Flynn, being the sole member personally of the downtown area, I think that has substantial weight, and I believe he has demonstrated over the years that he can put the public interest first. I don't believe Mr. Flynn should be excluded from participation, and I would recommend that Mr. Flynn is instructed to participate.
Darn.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, sir.
Yeah, I'll be a friend to Patrick, and you know, I am actually. It's not the connection with Coffey that concerns me about Patrick's participation. I'm a little. I know Patrick can definitely put the interest of the public ahead of his own personal interest, and I don't think that this issue has any substantial monetary or private personal value to Patrick. But there is the element that the code talks about I have to put glasses on to see. What does concern me is that it could diminish the public trust in the sense that Patrick has interest in liquor licenses downtown, in at least 2 places, I believe, downtown. And so in a sense, he's kind of voting on competition in the same area. And even while I think Patrick would, again, like I said, put the public interest ahead of his, the perception of that to the public is a bit concerning. You know, if I get to vote on, you know, what lawyers get to come into town, that could be a problem. So if it was up to me, I would actually exclude Patrick from votes on liquor licenses in the downtown area, including this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I tend to agree with Mr. Evans on this. The thing I'm asking myself is, as a member of this body, why would I expose Patrick to this? I think it's one of those things that, and I probably mean that in a different way than some people have taken what I just said, but you can tell that Patrick himself is agonizing over this. It's not, it's really gray to him, I believe. I think this is one of those times I would encourage the rest of us to step up and handle this. Mr. Starr went through a very similar thing in that he finally just asked personally to be excused because he wasn't comfortable. And I don't think Mr. Flynn's comfortable with this, just reading his body language and the way he's responding to this. So I wouldn't, I'm not talking about him not being a part of this due to a conflict. I just think this is something that we should excuse him for participating in.
Assembly members, if not, here's a question. Does sorry, Ms. Dombowski, ma'am.
That's okay. If somebody else has a question, I can wait.
My only question, I'm going to read what's in here so we can phrase
Oh,
the
okay.
question.
Okay. So I'll just, I think Mr. Evans makes a good point. However, as I said, when we have development issues come up and we have people on this body that are developers, though they're competitors, they still participate. I don't believe, it's not been demonstrated that Mr. Flynn will have a financial interest in AK Alchemist. But as I said, I think the weight of Mr. Flynn's, not only he is the sole member from the downtown area, but I think the weight of his knowledge base of just the assembly, the alcohol licensure, you see when we go through these, he and Mr. Starr are very sharp on these, and I think that would be of value to the assembly. I have confidence in Mr. Flynn did not divulge any information or engage in ex parte communication with the appellant's attorney. So I do not believe there's a disqualifying factor. Earlier, when we started this process, I believe Mr. Flynn did indicate he owned a liquor license, and the body did not find that to be an excluding factor. Therefore, I stand by my initial statements that I believe Mr. Flynn should be instructed to participate.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to agree with both Mr. Evans and Mr. Hall. And I think the biggest reasons why I agree with them is because I have never seen, as long as I've been around, an assembly member declare a conflict of interest through an official document that's going to be on the records forever. And Mr. Flynn did that. So to me, I think that he has some concerns, and I think that he should be excused from this deliberation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Starr, sir.
Through the chair, Mr. Flynn, during the petition by the applicant and some of the work that we do typically as assembly representatives, we engage sort of trying to find solutions. And some of in the earlier one that Mr. Hall referenced, I got pretty close to trying to mediate and trying to help and trying to stay out of court or whatever. Did you have that role in this capacity that would have engaged you differently than the rest of us to a point that you know more about the situation, either from a position of prejudice that you would know more and be judgmental on that, or do you feel like you know more about the topic because it's in your district and could be a benefit to the discussion and the debate?
Well, there's many ways to answer that question.
Well, I'd like them both. I mean,
so yes, I did engage with the applicant again prior to.
As you would be expected to, quite frankly.
He did send me a copy of his. I think I referenced this earlier in the interrogatory. He did send me a copy of his sort of build-out plans. Looked like a great facility, something I would absolutely support for the eastward expansion of the downtown area. you have heard my comments on the record as to how tricky I think this specific issue is, not just because of it's in my district, but because it could affect, well, will affect what we decide to do, the entirety of our community, given the proliferation of mobile food units throughout Anchorage.
Connexes.
Well, connexes and trailers and all kinds of things. The flip side of that, of course, is, I think you know this, I do have a bias toward bricks and mortar businesses in the downtown area because that is the basis by which we have a year-round economy in downtown Anchorage. You can't get a table at Glacier Brewhouse in June, but you sure can in November. And that's how we support our PAC and other things. So, I don't know how you decide if that means I took too large a role in this or not. Again, I kind of leave it to the body to determine.
Good. Well, thanks for the honest answer. I quite frankly think we struggle with that. All of us do from time to time, depending on how deep we engage the conversation. We're obviously biased. You saw me in one of our ordinances. I even left the dais to go preach uphill to you folks because I was so passionate about it. So I'm going to side with Ms. Demboski. Just when we vote, I'll probably instruct you to participate because your answer didn't allude to me that you got too close to the edge, that you made your mind up before we hear it. In my situation, I would judge it that I had done everything I did, and I felt, and it's all done now, I felt the city erred, and I said it publicly plenty. You haven't come out with a position yet. I think your personal views are your personal views as a legislator. You haven't said yes, no, or otherwise that I've heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments from Assembly members? Not seeing any. So the question in front of us, let me state it. Does Assembly Member Flynn have a substantial financial or private interest in the AK Alchemist question before the Assembly? Now, if the vote on the question is a negative, then Assembly Member Flynn may fully participate in further proceedings and on decision of this matter. If the vote on the question is affirmative, then the Assembly member shall not vote and shall not participate in any further proceedings or discussions on the matter. So, I want up on the board. Absolutely.
So if you could just repeat the instruction again, yes?
So a no means Mr. Flynn has to participate.
Thank you.
A yes means he will not participate.
Thank you.
She got it simple. Please vote.
And Mr. Flynn can't vote.
Okay. This is odd.
4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a tie.
He's in.
No, he's out. Huh? If anybody wants to reconsider and switch sides, you're more than welcome. So if it's a tie, that means what?
He does not participate.
He does not participate. Big mistake. Okay.
Okay. Mr. Flynn, take care, sir. Okay.
Mr. Chair. Yeah.
Mr. Honeman, we're going to go into executive session now. Is there something going into executive session, Mr.
Well, I don't, we'd ask, is there anything to disclose, I guess, going with this. I did not hire Mr. Coffey, nor have I hired Mr. Blomfield for any projects or anything, but I have known the family through the hockey business.
Right.
We've known Mr. Coffey. I think we want to make sure we get it on record.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't have anything more to disclose other than knowledge.
Okay. Ms. Tucker?
Thank you, through the chair. I just wanted to iterate for the body that when a person is, as Mr. Flynn has been, excused from the proceedings, that means that it is improper to have conversation with him concerning this matter, and it is improper for Mr. Flynn to participate informally in conversations with you on the matter. So if he's out, he's out. And so let's...
Thank you, Ms. Tucker.
Thank you.
Ms. Dembowski?
Thank you. And for the record, I just want to say I did not read Mr. Flynn's email, but I opened it and I saw a lot of words, and so I sent him back an email saying, we need to rule on your conflict, and I didn't read your email. So,
Mr. Starr, sir.
I don't know, this seems pretty scripted, but I haven't read anything in any of these packets that indicate to me the need to go into executive session. I'd like to debate that a little bit because, you know, the public doesn't like us when we go into private quarters. So why, at this point, if we're not voting tonight or the 22nd, why do we have to go into executive session?
Julia, do you want to take that one, or do you want me to answer?
Why don't we get the motion on the floor first to go to executive session, then it's properly debated? Go ahead, Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. AK Alchemist is an appeal of an administrative decision under AMC 21.50.500A4. Assembly Council serves as legal counsel to the Assembly on this appeal matter. At the Assembly's request, Assembly Council prepared a confidential memo, and Assembly members have questions. Mr. Chairman, I move that we now meet in executive session to discuss this administrative adjudication with Assembly Legal Counsel.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Now, Mr. Starr.
We're not supposed to discuss it amongst ourselves. So when I go into the group with all of you and I prejudice the conversation with my questions of concern, I've just, don't yank your head, Ms. I don't know that I could correct myself to not judge you when you do it. So we're going to debate in private session, and again, I thought we weren't supposed to do that. I don't need to go into executive session to have clarity over the memos that she sent me. I understand it. So if it's still confidential, what are we going to do inside that session? We can't debate. We can clearinghouse the information, but wouldn't we be best served to do that individually based on our own concerns as opposed to in a collective group where we're supposed to remain independent and unbiased on others' comments? That's all. I get swayed. When Mr. Honeman has a question and he goes down that path, I'm like, I didn't even think of that. He's now swayed my opinion inside that, even though we're not in debate. I don't want to be put into that circumstance, nor do I want to influence somebody else inside private session by my questioning.
Ms. Tucker, could you help us with this, ma'am?
Certainly. Mr. Starr, through the chair, one of the exceptions to Open Meetings Act, specifically in state code, is for administrative adjudication. And this particular case came to the Assembly as an appeal of an administrative decision under our code. And so the Assembly, in addressing an administrative adjudication, has been advised by outside special counsel more than once that when the Assembly takes on that role in a quasi-judicial matter, they are allowed to deliberate in deliberative sessions that don't even have to be in executive session. And so other attorneys over the years, including now retired Judge Tan when he was in private practice, have published papers and provided education to municipal attorneys throughout the state, and his opinion, which I agree with, is that if you are allowed to debate totally off record, which is what Cheryl Brooking advised this body when it was all 11 of you that were going to be doing the Eberhardt matter, that if you can do it under the exception under state law on administrative adjudication, then you can do it in executive session. What the purpose for tonight was that even if you didn't have questions about the process or the matters covered in the confidential legal briefing, other members on the Assembly are not going to be as educated as you are, have your years of experience in handling these matters, and it isn't a situation that I would be comfortable in, having people come necessarily one at a time and running basically a serial meeting through my office with their questions. So
Can I debate you on that single point? Because you finally got to what my concern is. Why, if we're not allowed to talk amongst ourselves, then the ability to have a serial conversation won't occur. And when you have a one-on-one consult, you are unbiasing those that would potentially be sitting in the room with you.
So let's back up to your first part of your question, which is what you said is if we're not allowed to talk amongst ourselves. It's not that you're not allowed to talk amongst yourselves. You're not for the purpose of this hearing, because every administrative appeal or quasi-judicial matter can have its own set of rules depending on what type of matter it is. But for purposes of this one, the concept and the rules that were set out and shared with the parties on this was that you wouldn't be talking amongst yourself offline.
I get that, but again, it's not a case where we would impugn someone's reputation in public. We won't be messing around with the financial ramifications of the city's finances by disclosing our legal strategy, meaning another reason to go into private session is because we would be putting our tipping our hand on our case. That's not the kind of case we have in front of us. So if it's a factual matter of exchange of data, then the obligation for everybody to read their packet and decide and or listen to the testimonies thereof would be equal basis, as opposed to going into a room with strong personalities that might, pique your interest. I just don't know that it's an applicable answer. Not to say that it won't be productive. I'm just thinking that if the interest is to sort of stay unbiased as a group and weigh in independently in January, there's a lot of time to go one-on-one with our legal counsel who knows best. That's all.
Is that all your advice, Ms. Tucker?
Yeah, just there is not in my view, this body can decide whether to do the offline deliberations with the plus and minuses of the public trust that you've pointed out in your beginning, because that's really what you're talking about here. They can do it in executive session, in which case there's a tape, and the tape is released at final adjudicatory, a final decision in the matter, or they can, as you suggest, do it in public. And so that is a decision of the body. And I'm explaining why I believe that there is a choice for the assembly to make. But in terms of which process this body is going to use for this matter, that is the decision of the body.
Well, I will use one example in the packet, and if you explain that it's somehow confidential, but if some of the strategy is to maybe strategy is the wrong word, but if one of the concepts in there is to go point by point over whether or not this case complies with the conditional use permits or the criteria in for a conditional use, let's say that's the thing that's up for debate. Why is a subject like that? It's in our packet, placarded confidential. I don't understand why the public can't hear our debate on the criteria of it's a public meeting space, it meets the downtown comprehensive plan. None of that sort of discussion and debate around that. So is there things that should be mentioned in, we've done this before in the past, that can only be an executive session, and then there's things that, you can have a public discussion about.
I would not have anticipated that the executive session would be devoted to discussion about whether the criteria were met. I believe that the best place for that is going to be in the instructions that this body gives me in terms of writing up what the options are that this body wants to have open and wants to have that debate on.
Well, again, I just don't, even if it comes to the point of giving you instructions, I'm not sure there's anything in here that's so secretive that we can't just do the public's work in public. It's a judiciary matter that we've gotten in our lap, and we want to show people how we do it. That's all. I just don't, in a private room, I don't have any problems about what's said in there, but I don't know that it's so earth-shattering that we can't say it in public.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. I've got a few other comments. Mr. Honeman. The question is, shall we go into executive sessions?
Yeah, I see where Mr. Starr's going with this, and I guess I would have to ask either Mr. Bosky, who's taken the lead on it from the committee side, or Ms. Tucker, whoever might answer. is what is the city or the municipality, by our decision at the end, what is it that we're risking, if you will, if it goes to the next appeal? Is that something we can talk about publicly? I mean, are we going to be liable for any losses or things like that? I mean, I guess I'd like to know if.
Well, if I may.
Mr. Lebowski, ma'am.
Ms.
You're on the
Tucker-
list anyway.
Thank you. Part of the reason it was structured this way is because, like in Eberhart, and that's the only example that I can draw from because that's the one I participated in, it is attorney-client communication is protected, right? So in Eberhart, there were certain things as decisions we made could be appealable to the court. So we had legal counsel that was there to discuss with us and show us, you know, what we were looking at, what his expectation was. We could ask those legal behind those questions. In this particular case, you know, the intent to go into executive session is very similar to the relationship we had with Mr. Levesque. We have legal counsel. As we saw during the discussions or during the hearing, the parties were clearly saying that they don't comply with the current code. So some of the discussion that I anticipate having would be assembly members interacting with counsel, asking if we do this, what is our exposure or liability? If we do this, you know, essentially, and if you look at the memo, you know, there are things in there that counsel has articulated as basically a structure, a framework for decision making. Out of that discussion, and I think Mr. Starr, I want to apologize because when I was shaking my head, I wasn't disagreeing with you. What I was thinking in my mind is I don't think you're thinking of this as an administrative hearing, like an appeal, as Ms. Tucker indicated. This isn't a typical, just a conditional use permit. It's an appeal, so it makes it adjudicatory. So that's why it's different. That's why you can go in that room and we can talk about what's in the memo. We can talk about some of the certain things because state law gives us the ability to deliberate, period, as Ms. Tucker indicated. So, you know, the comments were made about what state statute says. It's not the same as a typical conditional use permit because this is an adjudicatory matter. So
Can
I
get clarification from your perspective on that, Mr. Chairman? If you don't mind the liberty, then I'll shut up. But what you just said is important in that particular case. But, for example, if the other side's lawyers were sitting out there watching us, what would that do to the case, if you will, that they would get all of a sudden a strategy on our thinking? I didn't say the lawyers would do anything. All I'm saying is there are factors that Assembly Council has pointed out that need to be considered, and I think we've never treated any other. I mean, it's very common when the Department of Law or somebody issues us an opinion, it's typically not published. And if we want to give it out, we usually have to get permission. I mean, this is standard how we operate with legal opinion. And so... Not necessarily. I would beg to differ in the debate because it's more related to future lawsuits, the potential to impugn someone's character, or the disclosure of that information could sway the strategy. That's why I was asking you, do you feel like what we would discuss, if we discussed it in an open category, that the other side's lawyers could take that information and change their perspective to win, lose, or draw? I couldn't comment on that. What I will say, and it's what I've continued to say, is I think it's appropriate for Assembly Counsel, legal counsel, to provide the Assembly legal advice, and I believe that advice is privileged, and the Assembly, I think, has the opportunity to digest the memo, understand what the issues are, and then through that discussion, I would expect that this Assembly Council would draft proposed findings of fact and conclusion of law, much like what's happened in Eberhart. Those are published, and then once those are published, we come back on the 12th, and that's when you say whatever you want in open public. But, it's not the same as ex parte communication, like, I meet you in the grocery store. When everybody's there, it's an announced meeting. I think it's appropriate to go through and talk about legal advice. Yeah.
Vote. We've had debate on this. Let's vote now. A yes will move us into executive session, a no will not. Please vote. We're going into executive session. Ms. Gray Jackson?
The motion is already. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The motion is already on the floor.
Okay, we're going to executive session. That was approved by the body. We'll be back eventually. back in session. Ms. Gray Jackson, did a motion from you. I wanted to release the tape from the executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the tape from the executive session be released
At the conclusion of all legal.
at the conclusion of all legal matters before us.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ask unanimous consent. See no objection, that's done. Last time in business is adjournment. Somebody make a motion.
Second.
We're adjourned.